Well, the window is not working and that can be annoying, but there's no reason you should put off fixing your window, especially if it's in the stuck down position. I'm going to show you what I would do to find out what's wrong with the window and how easy it is to fix this yourself. First things first, let's talk about what's inside your door. This is what you call a window regulator, and this is what makes your window going up and down possible. How this works is the window is clamped in right here, and you have these tracks, and those clamps will ride up and down on those tracks, and how you get that to happen is with these cables. The cables go over here where there's a motor that's going to turn the cables to move these guides on the tracks, and that's how you get your window operations. Sometimes you can repair these getting the motor or the clamp separately, but it's going to be much easier and more reliable if you get it all together as an assembly from 1aauto.com. Before we replace the regulator, let's check out a couple of things to make sure that this is the part that you need. What I want to do first is make sure the key is in the on position, and then check the switch. See what's happening. See if you can hear any clicking going on. See if the motor itself is binding up. Maybe you hear the motor moving a little bit. In that case, the switch is doing its job. It's just something's going on internally. If not, then you want to check the other switches, see if there's other windows that are working. If nothing's working, it could be an electrical issue. It's always a good idea to check for fuses if there's any fuses blown before you start ripping panels apart. One more thing before we get into the door panel, just double check the window switch. Make sure if you manipulate the switch back and forth, maybe give it a wiggle, a couple taps, see if anything starts working. If that's the case, someone could have spilled coffee in there or even rainwater got in there and the switch doesn't have a good connection. In that case, you're gonna have to replace the switch, and you can get that at 1aauto.com. There's a couple more things we want to check out before we confirm that we need to replace the window regulator, and we're going to have to take the door panel off so we can check those out. To remove most door panels, you usually need to remove screws behind the door release handle and the grab handles. Here's a little tip for you. When you're working on your vehicle, it's a good idea to have a magnet tray to collect all your nuts and bolts so they're organized while you're doing the job. But before you pull the panels off, always check for screws that might be hiding underneath trim pieces or on the bottom of the door panel. If you can, try to use a plastic trim tool to pop panels off. That way you don't scratch the door panel. And pull this off. Once you get the panel off, you'll need to disconnect any cables that run to the handle. For our test, we're going to want to leave the connector attached to the door. Then we have to work on getting the vapor barrier off the door. Most of these are held on by adhesive that you can cut with a razor blade, but sometimes they are held on by screws or rivets. I'm just going to take it off all the way. There we go. Now we want to check the connection at the window motor. We are going to test it with a test light, but just take a good visual look at the connector, give it a wiggle. Maybe it loosened up. It could have disconnected. It doesn't normally happen, but it's a good thing to check before you actually disconnect it. And you can even do that while you're manipulating the switch back and forth and see if anything changes. Slide that off. And you can see on this connector, there's a lot more wires. Normally, you're only going to have 2 wires. This has 5 wires in the front there and 2 thicker wires on the back. The 2 thicker wires are what the power and ground are for the actual motor. Now, on this vehicle, these power and grounds are there all the time. So even with the vehicle off, the power is there and the ground is there. So we could take a test light, now testing the red wire, put the test light on that side, and then the black wire, and we can see that the test light lights up. So there's good power and ground there. Normally you're only going to have 2 wires at the window motor, and when you turn the key on and push the switch on and off, that's when you're going to have power and ground there. Otherwise, it's not going to be power and ground all the time like this one. This one's a little bit more complicated. So we know we have power and ground, so we're going to plug this back in, and the window motor is still not working, but there's a little trick you can do. Sometimes there's a little dirt or debris or even corrosion on the motor brushes, and to free that up, you can give it a little tap with a hammer. Just like if you were trying to start a vehicle that had a bad starter motor, you give it a tap with a hammer, and sometimes it'll come back to life. So what you want to do is turn the key in the on position. And while you're pushing on the switch, just give it a tap. And there it goes. It's moving again. So in that case, we know there was something wrong internally in the motor. So this is only a temporary fix. This might be able to get you home. You can get the window up. But if you let this go, it's just gonna fail down the road. Now that we know the issue is with the motor, we're gonna go ahead and replace the window regulator assembly. Now you can separate the glass from the regulator clamps, but before you lower the regulator down, it's important to tape the glass up so it doesn't fall or break. Now we're going to turn the key in the on position. And we want to lower the window regulator. The window should stay. And those little clips are going to come down. We can shut the key off right there. Typically, there's a few nuts or bolts holding the regulator inside the door, and once you loosen those up, the regulator should be free. Comes out, and there it is. Installing the new regulator is simple. You just need to make sure that the tracks and the motor are facing the same direction as the old one that came out. And from there, just reverse the order in which you took everything off. And we're gonna have to connect the panel. Turn the key in the on position, then raise the window regulator up. Make sure the clamps are around the window. Before we put this all back together, now that we have the regulator and motor in and plugged in, we're going to test the functionality, make sure the window's working properly so we don't have to make any adjustments. The window goes down, and the window goes up. Beautiful. When it's time to put the door panel back on, double check everything. Make sure that you have all the clips lined up with the door before you push it back on. See, that wasn't so hard. You could do it too. Don't get stuck with your window down.